Hey, Dethroners, welcome back to the Dethroning Your Inner Critic podcast. I'm Joanna Kleinman, psychotherapist, empowerment coach, and CEO of the Dethroning Your Inner Critic coaching and consulting company. And today I want to talk with you about the secret that no one told you about experiencing joy, fulfillment, and peace in your life. So I'm just going to start out with the secret and then we're going to unpack it. Okay. So the secret is that you will not find your peace, your joy, your fulfillment by focusing on the positive things in your life. Accessing joy, fulfillment, deep inner peace is really not a mindset shift. It is actually the result of meeting your true, authentic self so deeply and honestly, meeting the part of you that carries your shame, your guilt, your sadness, your longing, your stress, your overwhelm, and unpacking, uncovering why you keep all of that around you. Now, I'm going to say something that might surprise you and it also might confuse you. Almost all of us have a deep addiction to stress, and we don't even realize it. So there is a science and a psychology of getting caught in our inner drama, also our outer drama, and our stress. And, many of us think, well, I'm not a drama queen, right? But we all have an inner critic. And our inner critic is actually a huge drama queen. So since we all have an inner critic, we all have a level of being a drama queen, okay? So understanding your inner addiction to your stress, to your drama, could actually change the unfolding of your life from this point forward. So the drama in your life, whether it's in your business or your career, or it could be drama with other people, it could be drama within yourself, it could be drama within your relationships, right? We're going to talk today about the tools to be able to diffuse the drama, to actually unhook yourself from it. First with yourself, which then allows you to diffuse it with especially the most challenging people in your life. And maybe those are the people that you think they're the most dramatic, they're the most annoying, right? They're the people that are most about themselves. I'm not like that at all. Okay, and I get that, but let's first talk about what it means that our inner critic is addicted to drama, okay? So what that means is that there is a part of our brain that is connected to parts of our personality. And that part of our personality is the part that creates unnecessary turmoil, unnecessary struggle. And what it creates within our body is this dysregulated energy that's in our nervous system that causes us to cling to the same vicious cycle of the same thoughts and the same beliefs on repeat, which then whips us up into the same intense emotions that have us acting out in ways that we don't want to keep acting out in, okay? Whether that's with ourselves, some part of our life, or maybe we're acting out in our relationships with other people. Now, I certainly never considered myself to be a person who is addicted to drama, but I can admit and I can see now that there are many areas and many examples in my life where I created unnecessary turmoil for myself and for people in my life who I love dearly, like my husband and my kids, right? Now, this is all historical. And it's not like I don't still sometimes get trapped into that unnecessary turmoil, but now I know what it is. Now I can spot it the moment that it creeps up and I can unhook myself from it, right? Now, I also never really knew that I struggled with anxiety, right? I wanted my life to go according to this ideal way that I thought it should be. And because I was focused on that ideal picture that I wanted my life to be, I was frequently inwardly stirred up. Right? I wanted my kids to be content and happy. I wanted my business goals to happen immediately. All right. Now, my life didn't match that ideal picture. And I'm wondering if you can relate to this. I'm wondering if you can see that you've got some ideal pictures of how you're supposed to be and how your life is supposed to be. And your life doesn't currently match those ideal pictures that your inner critic stirs inside of you, right? So at the time that I look back, right, I had my oldest child was dealing with anxiety starting at the age of around 7. And my inner critic would frequently say to me, "You've done something wrong. He would not be struggling with this if you had just done things differently." Right. And so that sent me on a spiral trying to fix something that my inner critic convinced me was broken for years. Right. And she would have me be, right. I call my inner critic worrying Wilhelmina. So Wilhelmina would have me preoccupied with fixing his emotions, making him happy, and then playing out these worst case scenarios. Right. Now, this is a vicious cycle I stayed in for years, not just with him. I would play these worst case scenarios out in all different areas of my life, right? And that would cause me to spiral into my automatic worry, right? And then I would get frustrated because I couldn't fix and change the parts of my life that didn't match the way that I thought that they should be. And, at the time that I was raising my kids and I was building my business, my husband was traveling almost every week. So my inner critic spent a lot of years blaming other people for my struggles. And then, of course, on top of that, I felt ashamed, right? I would get frustrated with my husband, but he was just doing his job, right? So what did all of this teach me? Well, I now see that that was my inner critic self that kept stirring up all that drama. And I didn't realize it. Right now, she kept all of that drama right at the surface. And I felt very righteous about all of my stress and overwhelm, right? And I would talk about it with other people. I would talk about it with my friends, and they'd be like, "Oh, yes, you're right." And I felt so right in how things should be different and how right I was to feel so overwhelmed at that point in my life, right? And now what I see is that it was all my inner critic's addiction to drama, right? Her addiction, her preoccupation to fixing everything in my life, fixing everything in my kids' lives, right? So that I could avoid my deeper feelings. So when we really uncover what it is in our life that we've been shoving down for our whole life, when we're finally willing to really pull back the curtain, to dig underneath the iceberg, this is where you will find feelings that are incredibly painful that you've been avoiding for your whole life. Feelings perhaps of loneliness or inferiority or abandonment or fear, right? So the way that played out for me is if I was able to fix my children's pain, wow, I felt alive. I felt good enough. I felt like, right? I was not inferior. I was not good enough, right? And now this started early on in my childhood when my parents used to fight. I would try and fix it. It's actually the reason why I became a psychotherapist and a coach. But the real work begins when we're willing to examine the vulnerable feelings that we've been trying so hard to hide and to not look at for most of our lives. And most people don't even know that they're operating on top of this deeply repressed pain. And that's because as children, there are things that are going to happen in our lives that make us feel out of control. And when we feel like we don't have any control, that is an overwhelmingly intense feeling, especially for a young child, right? So there's this really overwhelming sensation inside of us that feels overpowering, right? And that turns into this very intense, almost frenetic energy. And the way that we deal with that inner intense sensation is we try to control it from the outside. So for me, the way I controlled it was by fixing everyone else's emotions so they could be happy. I intervened when my parents started fighting. But here's the thing. What I didn't realize for much of my life was that there was this inner intensity that controlled and dominated my life. I didn't realize it was intense. I just thought, that's the way life is. I actually thought I was a laid back person. And on the outside, I was. The inside, whew, that's a whole different story. I got used to this inner sensation. And then I spent my life looking out for any potential danger that could erupt, right? So the story my inner critic kept me in was that I had to make sure that other people felt good about me. Otherwise, they were going to judge me and they were going to abandon me. So I was always waiting to be judged. And because I was always waiting to be judged, I had this wall around me. Now, once you broke through that wall, right? Once I knew you loved me, I had no wall. Thank goodness. That's a good thing. But at first glance, I had that look on my face like, don't mess with me. And that was all to protect myself from the fear of judgment and the fear of abandonment, which is really fundamentally a fear that I don't belong. So everyone has that core pain that we've shoved down and we're operating on top of, and we don't even know it. So if we're not aware of the lens through which we're viewing ourselves and our lives, we become addicted to the drama our inner critic creates in the first place, because basically that gives us a sense of control. That gives us this illusion that we're always prepared for any danger that might come our way, right? In my case, it was the danger of somebody judging me and rejecting me, abandoning me, right? So if my inner critic just kept me focused on the worst case scenarios and kept me focused on looking at all the ways where I wasn't good enough and looking at all the ways that I was comparing myself and my life to this ideal version of what I thought it was supposed to be, first of all, I believed I could just keep trying to fix and change and perfect things, and that's how I would reach that ideal, which of course is like the dangling carrot, right? The more you do, the more you just keep longing for what you don't have, which keeps you stuck in lack and not enoughness. So this is why addiction to drama and understanding our own inner addictions to our drama is so critical, because without understanding where you or other people that you care about are addicted to this inner critic cycle of drama in their life, you're never going to be able to experience the peace and joy and happiness that you're craving, no matter what your life looks like on the outside. Because we can't even realize that we're trapped in a cycle of essentially never feeling safe. Why do we never feel safe? Because our inner critic keeps whipping up these worst case scenarios and trying to get us to fix our life so we can become this ideal that we're never going to be. Now, here is the interesting part of this addiction to drama. Because we're always on guard for danger, we feel like being on guard is controlling not only our current situation, but our future situation. Right? Like somehow, if I'm on guard, I'll be protected if someone does judge me or rejects me. This cycle starts so young that we become trapped in a loop of the same thoughts and beliefs and emotions and behaviors, right? My vicious cycle is just to make sure that everyone is always happy with me and always feels good about me, or else they'll leave me. So I could just never be. I never had inner peace. And I suspect that that might be you, because that's how we're designed as human beings. So I always had my attention on all the potential things that could go wrong in the future. And how it becomes addiction is that in some weird way, that focus on the future relieves the overwhelming tension of the unknown. It's all an illusion created by our inner critic, of course, but we don't realize it. So we're so afraid of the possibility of being caught off guard, about the shoe dropping, about the rug being pulled out from under us, that we believe that it's beneficial to keep focusing either on the imagined future, which is all in our heads, or the dead past. That somehow if we keep rehashing things from the past, we won't repeat those mistakes. And if we keep worrying about the future, we won't be caught off guard. Now, for those of us who can see ourselves stuck in this addiction to drama, which is, I think, most of us, getting to that point of stillness and ease and flow actually feels terrifying. Now, think about that for a minute. Why would getting to that point of stillness and ease feel terrifying? So terrifying that it almost feels like death. Now, that is because we feel like we're not doing anything to protect ourselves. So if you're someone who's ever gone to a meditation class, and you've sat there, you've got yourself all together, you're going to have this great meditation, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're thinking about what happened at work last week, or you're thinking about what might happen with one of your kids, right? And then before you know it, you're like, I can't quiet my mind. I can't meditate. Okay. And you actually start thinking of things that are going to interrupt the ease and stillness. Now, why do we do that? Because that's our inner critic's addiction to worry. That's where our drama comes from. It's this constant sense of inner unease and urgency that's always within us to make everything okay that we believe isn't okay. But what's kind of cosmically funny, if you think about it, is that if you look at the very moment that you're listening to me right now, if you just focus all of your senses on this moment, you are okay right now. The only time where you are not okay is if in some way you're focusing on that dead past, or you're drumming up all these future worst case scenarios, whether it's an hour from now or a week from now or a month from now or a year from now. So when we're in the addiction and thinking about controlling our future, or replaying our mistakes from the past, or rehearsing and rehashing worst case scenarios, or rehashing arguments we've had with other people, or things we're gonna say to that person when we see them again, right? This helps us stay away, hidden from those deeply painful and vulnerable emotions that we've shoved down and we've never processed, we've never looked at. And we all have pain that we haven't processed. We've been inadvertently taught to shove it down, especially if you've had significant trauma in your childhood. But we've all had some version of trauma, right? Even if it's micro trauma. I've heard a lot of people in my Mastering Your Mind programs talk about growing up with experiences where they felt like constantly, when is the other shoe going to drop? When is my dad going to get angry again? When am I going to get rejected again? What if I can't be successful in my life? That's our inner critic mind. That's the mind that's always chattering, because that's our inner critic's job, to keep us protected. But from what exactly? So the anticipation, the readiness for the next bad thing, the readiness for the next bad trauma, that's what our inner critic is thinking it's protecting us from. So our inner critic chases the drama to avoid the feelings associated with the trauma, right? Our inner critic whips up the drama to avoid those deep emotions of the trauma. And that's why our inner critic is on edge and bracing all the time for the next shoe to drop. And that becomes our internal life. And our internal life creates our external reality. Think about that for a moment, right? When you're anxious and stressed and tense and overwhelmed, you are not your best self. You are not acting your best self with yourself. You are not acting your best self with others. And very often we keep ourselves stuck. Now, I used to live entirely in my head. I never knew that I even had an automatic mind. I didn't even know that my thoughts were separate from me. I thought my thoughts were me. There was no separation between the thoughts in my mind and my sense of self and what was going on in my life, right? I thought the thoughts in my mind determine my sense of self. So once I started doing the work of unhooking myself from my automatic thoughts, that's when I first understood that I have an inner critic self that's addicted to drama. Her name's Worrying Wilhelmina. And I only saw her as separate from me, like when I was probably in my early 40s. It took me that long to realize that that's who was running my life. So once I started doing the work of turning towards that mind, turning towards my inner critic, getting to know her deeply and intimately, turning towards my body and my nervous system, letting that inner discomfort show me what was hidden underneath the surface. That's when I started to change every single part of my life, from my sense of who I am, to my own power, to my ability to create the business that I have now, to my relationships with my husband and my kids and my clients and my friends and my family, and my body and my health, every important part of my life shifted. Not overnight, but that's why I created the mind method. Because the mind method is a way to deeply understand and identify and untangle yourself from the thoughts and beliefs and emotions and body sensations and behaviors that you've mistaken for your true self and have caused all of your suffering. See, your inner critic was created a long time ago to actually be a reliever of your pain, a distraction from that deep, overwhelming pain that you were too scared to see. And we needed that as children because that deep pain is so overwhelming that we have to quickly figure out how to shove it down and how to overcompensate for it. But that's the very thing that keeps us in a heightened state of intense thought loops and painful emotions. But in some odd way, those painful emotions feel somehow like they're keeping us safe. I was just talking to a client yesterday about her relationship with her daughter. She has a lot of anger towards her daughter, which is really all a distraction for her own fear of being unloved. And so if she can stay angry at her daughter, it relieves that pain, right? She can just blame her daughter for her daughter's behavior and not have to look at her deep fear of being unloved that goes all the way back to her childhood. So as difficult as it is for my client to examine that deeply buried fear, she has a choice here, right? She can either be right about her anger or she can go to that vulnerable place and heal her relationship with her daughter, which is exactly what she's choosing to do. But so many people won't ever face their vulnerability, which is how people become estranged from each other, right? We'd rather stay distracted and keep using this frenetic and chaotic energy as our pain reliever. And that's what our inner critic drama is. It keeps us stuck in our automatic stress response, right? Our survival mechanism stress response of fight, flight, freeze. That's the survival mechanism part of our brain. That's where our inner critic lives. And when our inner critic is in charge of our mind and our body and our life, our cortisol levels go up, our adrenals are on overdrive. And over time, this leads to emotional and physical exhaustion if we keep staying stuck in our inner critic drama. Right? Now, this is what's happening when you see somebody else reacting in a very intense and exaggerated way. That's their inner critic that's keeping them stuck to reacting to deeply hidden pain that they don't even realize is being triggered. They think their overreaction is justified because they don't even know that they're really in a state of feeling unloved or unimportant or not good enough or abandoned or whatever that hidden core pain really is. It's like a button gets pushed. Okay. So our inner critic drama has us engaging in behaviors like overscheduling ourselves, maybe even gossiping about other people as a way to feel somehow connected and like we belong, fighting with someone, maybe sometimes in order to even feel closer to them. It gives us a hit of energy. It gives us a hit of righteousness, right? And that's the pain relief. Our inner critic stress is actually anesthesia for that deeper pain in some way where we get something from that stress, right? Now, I love working with clients who are more committed to dethroning their inner critics so that they can access love instead of remaining in their reflexive and automatic reactions to everything and everyone in their life, right? So, but if you think about your inner critic as being your pain reliever, what that really is that your inner critic is only interested in keeping you numb to your deepest core wound, right? Now, for those of you that have been following me for a while, the mind method for dethroning your inner critic, the N step of the mind method, neutralize the never-ending message, right there is our deepest core wound. Our deepest core wound was formed so long ago, and it just is the never-ending message that keeps reverberating throughout every part of our life. So if our inner critic makes us feel something like anger or has us ruminating about what someone else did or didn't do, well, now we're feeling something, and that something is a familiar feeling. We've been feeling that way for our whole life. So our inner critic keeps creating more scenarios, right? Sometimes the scenarios are only in our head, okay? But the scenarios that we keep experiencing keep causing us to feel that same feeling. And then our physical brain gets addicted to that feeling. It feels natural. It feels like that's who we are because that's all we've ever known. So our brain gets addicted to the same thoughts, the same beliefs, the same emotions that create the same hormonal response that will keep giving us some version of that pain relief, of that numbness to that core issue, some distraction from the deeper underlying core pain and trauma that we've been trying to hide from for our whole lives. Now, remember, when we were children, that was the only way we could survive emotionally. We had to feel like we had this false sense of safety and certainty and control. You know, if you had a parent that, let's say, was an alcoholic or raged uncontrollably, that is terrifying to a child. You had to figure out emotionally how you could have some sense of control, right? That's how some of us have become people pleasers or over functioners. That's how we started out as the peacemakers. I was certainly the peacemaker in my parents' relationship. Like at 6 years old or 8 years old or 12 years old, I had any control over my parents' relationship. Of course I didn't, but I believed I did. And that gave me a sense of control and gave me a sense of certainty and gave me a sense of predictability. And that's the power of the mind method. We're not only examining the automatic thoughts and beliefs and emotions and body sensations and nervous system reactions and behaviors that feed the ongoing addiction, but now we start to rewire very different thoughts and beliefs. We recognize, you know what? I don't actually have to keep staying in that same cycle of drama. I actually can tune into very different thoughts and beliefs that have me experiencing more calm and peace and certainty and gratitude right now. I no longer need to keep trying to predict and script and control my future because you know what? If the shoe drops in the future, I know now as a grown woman that I will be okay. I don't need to keep protecting myself from the possibility that somebody might abandon me or leave me or not love me, or I might not be good enough. Because you know what? My feelings of being of value and being good enough and being whole and complete are no longer attached to anyone else. They're no longer attached to any goals I accomplish or don't accomplish. I feel that already now. And that's a different life. When you are whole and complete and at peace and fully fulfilled now and fully alive now, you now can start creating, but not because you're trying to overcompensate for something, not because you're trying to numb yourself to something, not because you're trying to get your life to match an ideal picture so that you can feel whole. You feel that now. It's not until we're able to see that we can then say to ourselves, you know what? These moments of tension, of angst, of anxiety, of anger, of fear, I don't need that anymore. That is no longer the life that I want to be living. So when I created the mind method, I recognized that. I recognized that I used to feel alive when I could help somebody else feel better. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it is a little bit of both, right? I became a therapist as a result of it. But now I can see where it all came from. So now, with everything that I'm creating in my life, where I'm stepping into a place of actually certifying therapists and coaches in the mind method, which my old self never would have felt good enough to do. Now that I'm opening that part of my life up, what I can see is that I can just move forward in my dreams, but I'm at peace now. I no longer need to be on guard, waiting, just in case somebody rejects me or somebody thinks I'm not good enough, right? I can feel safe now. I can feel loved and valued now. Whereas before, I used to seek that from all different facets of my life. Now, a lot of people don't want to examine their core pain. They say, like, why would I dig up all that stuff? I don't want to look at that. I don't want to deal with that. What if I find out things? What if I find out I don't like my life right now? What if I find out I don't like my partner? What if I find out I don't like my career? I don't want to look at any of that. When you can be able to see your truth, that's when your whole life will change. And what has been keeping us so unhappy as a culture is that we don't want to look at that core pain. Now, I'm not talking about getting lost in that core pain, right? We don't need to overanalyze it and rehash it and figure out exactly what it was and where it came from. We just have to see how our core pain continues to rule our life now. And so the mind method is not about going back and rehashing your past. It's not about your past at all. It's about recognizing that you are continuing to drag your past into your present, and not only into your present, but you're smearing your past all over your future. So you think that you're looking out into your future, but you're really repeating your past over and over and over again. But people have been taught to hide behind their screens or their fancy homes or more stuff or more toys. And we keep ourselves so busy and so distracted by trying to outrun all the things that we don't want to have to face. But unless we're willing to slow down and take a look at what we're actively blocking, we're never going to find the peace and joy and fulfillment that we crave. People don't want to look at what their soul is really longing for, right? Maybe you keep getting this itch for a new career direction, or taking steps towards a dream that you keep shoving down and have convinced yourself that that's not possible, right? Or you want to step outside of your comfort zone, but you feel that you don't have the confidence yet, and you're waiting until you get the confidence to be able to take that first step. Or maybe you're in a loveless relationship and you keep staying there because it's so scary to let that go, because what if you never find love again? We can't access any of what we really want if we're not willing to face the stuff that needs healing and needs transformation. So those thought patterns are deeply embedded in your brain. So look at those thoughts every day that you have that rob you of your peace, rob you of your joy, keep you from accessing gratitude for who you already are and the life that you've already created. Is it possible that you've been living in your inner critic drama, waiting for the next shoe to drop? And how is that impacting your life? How is that impacting you every day? How is that impacting your relationships? How is it impacting the quality of your life? And how is it impacting what is possible for you moving forward? Imagine being able to be immune to those patterns. Imagine if instead of changing those thoughts, eliminating your inner critic, what if her rants and raves just turned into white noise? Imagine what your life would be if those thoughts and beliefs no longer had the hold that they have on you now. What would be possible for you? Who would you become? That is the freedom that's possible when you learn to master your mind. So thanks for tuning in today, and I'll see you on the next episode.